Hi, I'm Kristen. Welcome to my guide on how to build a DIY convertible shelf workbench. Perfect for those of us who have small workshops and need to save space. This video is made to be a guide that goes along with the step-by-step digital build plans for this convertible shelf workbench. There is a link to those digital plans in the description below. Let's get started.
Once you've purchased all the materials, you'll start by cutting the 3/4 inch plywood sheet as indicated in the cut list diagram. I'm using a table saw, but a circular saw can also work for this step. Now cut all of the 2x4s as listed and shown in the diagrams. The 3 9x9 inch plywood boards will be cut in half at a 45-degree angle, and you will end up with 6 right triangles that will be used as braces. Once all cuts have been made, drill in the pocket holes as indicated in the diagrams in the 8 vertical pivot supports and 4 base side boards. Mark out the pivot points for the 4 shelf supports. Begin with the 8.5 inch vertical shelf pivot supports. Mark the end of each board opposite of the pocket holes, 1 3/4 inches from the end and 1 3/4 inches from the side. I like to use my combination square to do this. Repeat these steps for the 8 18-inch horizontal shelf support boards. Once all 16 pivot points have been marked, use your 3/8 inch spade bit to drill all the way through the 16 boards at these marks. Now assemble the 8 shelf supports, 4 for the right side and 4 for the left side. Use wood glue and 2.5 inch pocket hole screws to do this. Set one set of these shelf supports off to the side. Add the 6 9-inch right triangle corner braces to the corners of the remaining 3 sets of shelf supports using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch wood screws, keeping the top and outer edges flush with one another and covering the pocket holes. Pre-drill the screw holes with your countersink bit. Add the 3 21 7/8 inch moving shelf tops to the shelf supports. The 3 sets of shelf supports that have the triangular braces will have the 21 7/8 inch moving shelf tops fastened to them. Align the back and sides of the shelf top with the back and side of the shelf supports, triangle braces facing inward. Attach the shelf tops using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch wood screws. Pre-drill the screw holes. Repeat these steps for all 3 moving shelves. Use the remaining unbraced set of shelf supports and the 23 7/8 inch shelf top to build the 4th shelf. This will be the anchor shelf that all other moving shelves pivot from. The shelf supports should be 2 inches in from the back of the shelf's back edge and flush with the shelf sides. Attach the shelf top using wood glue and 1 1/4 inch wood screws. Pre-drill the screw holes first. Set all shelves aside. Now, mark all pivot points in the 4 shelf pivot arms. Measurements are shown in the diagram. Choose 2 of these boards to be the lower pivot arm. The lower pivot arms will have an extra hole, and this is where the workbench support leg will be attached and pivot from. Now use your 1-inch Forstner bit to drill down a 1/2 inch at each of these marks. This is done so that the head of the hex bolt does not stick out past the face of the board. Then use your 3/8 inch spade bit to drill all the way through the boards at the center of these holes. The side of the board with the Forstner hole will face the outside of the shelf during assembly. Now mark both of the 26.5 inch vertical leg boards on one end, 1 3/4 inch from the end and 1 3/4 inch from the side. As in the previous step, use the 1-inch Forstner bit to drill down at these marks a 1/2 inch. Then drill all the way through the boards with your 3/8 inch spade bit in the center of these holes. Assemble the workbench support leg. Start by creating a line 8 inches up from the bottom of both vertical leg boards. Use wood glue and 2.5 inch wood screws to attach the horizontal leg board to both of the vertical boards as shown. The Forstner holes should face the outside of the leg. Now we're going to assemble the base. Start by assembling the base frame. The two 25-inch vertical base frame boards and two 39.5-inch horizontal base frame boards will create the base frame. Use wood glue and 2.5-inch wood screws to assemble the frame. All sides should be flush. Flip the base frame over once assembled. Now assemble the sides of the base. The four 28-inch vertical base sideboards and four 11-inch horizontal base sideboards will be used to create both sides. Attach the base sides to the base frame. Use a piece of scrap 2x4 to elevate the base side to the level of the vertical base frame board and center between the two horizontal frame boards. Repeat these steps for the other side. Attach the base top. The three 36.5-inch baseboards will create the base top. Attach these three boards to the base frame with no gaps between them and centered within the base sides. There should be a 1/4 inch gap on either side of the outside top boards. Use wood glue and 2.5-inch wood screws to secure these boards in place. Set the base aside. Install the pivot arms to the shelves. Start by laying two of the moving shelves and the anchor shelves upside down on the floor. First, install both upper pivot arms to the horizontal shelf supports using 6 3/8-inch hex bolts and 6 corresponding locking nuts. The Forstner holes should face the outside. Keep in mind that the shelves are upside down, so the upper arms being installed are on the bottom for now. Tighten the bolts using a socket wrench, but don't tighten so much as to prevent movement. Next, install the lower pivot arms in the same way, keeping in mind that the lower pivot arms have the extra hole for the workbench support leg. When all pivot arms are installed, it will look like this. Now attach the base to the anchor shelf. Turn the base upside down and slide it into place over the anchor shelf, snugging it up to touch the anchor shelf's vertical support arm. There should be a 1/4 inch gap on either side of the shelf base to allow for smooth movement of the pivot arms. Now, attach the base top to the bottom of the horizontal shelf supports using 2.5-inch wood screws. Once the base is attached to the anchor shelf, use the two L-brace ties and 3/4 inch wood screws to secure the angle of the vertical pivot arm to the bottom of the base top. Install the remaining moving shelf by carefully sliding it into place and securing it to the pivot arms using hex bolts and nylon nuts, just like you did with the other shelves. Attach the support leg to the lower pivot arm by laying it on the pivot arm and secure it in place using the remaining bolts and nuts. Attach the locking caster wheels to the four corners of the base using 3/4 inch wood screws. Place them in the locked position. Carefully flip the workbench over with the support leg down. Now attach the workbench support leg chain. Use the 48-inch jack chain and secure one end of the chain at the top of the horizontal support leg using a 3/4 inch wood screw. Make sure the leg is 90 degrees to the lower pivot arm. Then pull the chain tight up to the second pivot arm and secure the chain in place with a 3/4 inch wood screw. Remove the excess chain. Carefully move the workbench into the shelf position and clamp at a pivot point to prevent it from moving out of the shelf position. Now attach the two 18 by 24.5 inch plywood panels over the base sides using 1 1/4 inch wood screws. This will add more stability to the base. Add the hole for the pivot securement eye bolt. Use your combination square to measure 2 inches down and 2 inches in from the top right side of the panel. Then use your 3/8 inch spade bit to drill a hole all the way through the plywood and both 2x4 boards at this point. Place the 5/16 inch eye bolt through this hole to prevent the shelf from pivoting out of the shelf position. Secure the eye bolt to the side panel using the remaining jack chain and 3/4 inch wood screw. Next, install the 2 gas struts to the back of the shelf. The top screw for the top strut bracket will be located 40 inches up from the base on the bottom of the lower pivot arm. Use a 1 1/4 inch wood screw and a 1/4 inch washer to attach the brackets. Once the top bracket is installed, attach the gas strut to the secured top bracket and loose lower bracket. Allow the gas strut to hang straight and attach the top screw of the lower bracket 20 inches below the top screw of the upper bracket. Be sure all 4 screws and washers are in place. Repeat these steps for the left side as a mirror image to the right side. The gas struts are used to allow the shelf to convert to a workbench in a more controlled manner. This is what each installed strut should look like. Before placing any load on the shelves, practice converting the shelf to a workbench and vice versa several times. Adjust the tension of the bolts as needed. Last but not least, safety information. When storing items on the shelves, the heaviest items should be placed on the anchor shelf. Lighter items should be placed on the top 2 shelves with medium weight items on the bottom shelf. When used as a workbench, the support leg should always be down at 90 degrees and the wheels should be locked. When used as a storage shelf, the securement bolt should be in place to prevent pivoting out of the shelf position and the wheels should be locked. The only time the wheels should not be locked is when you are carefully moving the shelf to a new location with the eye bolt securely in place to prevent shelf pivoting. Also, intermittently check the pivot points of the shelf to be sure the nuts have not loosened. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this build as much as I did, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me through my Etsy shop.